Close your eyes now, and let yourself settle deeply into the warmth of this moment. Outside your window, perhaps snow is falling in soft, silent whispers, or maybe the winter night is clear and crystalline, with stars scattered across the darkness like diamonds on velvet. Inside, you are safe, you are warm, you are perfectly comfortable. The world has grown quiet, and in this stillness, we journey together to a place where stories live eternal. Where winter magic dances through the ages, and where the spirit of Christmas glows like candlelight in the darkness. Tonight, we will wander through time and across continents, gathering tales that have been told by firesides for generations. These are stories that have warmed hearts through countless winters, tales whispered by grandparents to children tucked beneath quilts, narratives that have traveled from European villages to American hearths, carrying with them the essential truths of human kindness, hope, and transformation. Each story we'll encounter is a gift, wrapped not in paper and ribbon, but in words that have been polished smooth by time, cherished and retold until they've become part of our collective memory of what it means to celebrate the darkest, coldest season by creating light and warmth within our hearts. So breathe deeply now. Let the tensions of the day drift away like snow melting on warm ground. We begin our journey through these timeless winter tales, each one a doorway into a world of wonder, each one a reminder of the magic that lives in the human heart during the season of lights and hope. We begin in a modest apartment in a great American city, at the turn of the 20th century, where two young people live with very little money but an abundance of love. Their names are Jim and Della Young, and though their furnishings are threadbare and their walls show the wear of countless tenants before them, their small home glows with a warmth that has nothing to do with the inadequate radiator sputtering in the corner. Della stands before a mirror, her fingers working through her most prized possession, the one beautiful thing she owns in all the world. Her hair, rich and lustrous as polished mahogany, cascades down her back in waves that catch the winter light streaming through the frost-etched window. It reaches below her knees when fully unbound, and when she lets it fall around her shoulders, it becomes a cloak of shimmering brown silk that would make a queen envious. This hair has been her glory since childhood. Tended with care, brushed each night with 100 strokes, a living treasure that grows with her through all her years. Tomorrow is Christmas, and in her small cloth purse, Della has exactly $1.87. She has been saving these coins for months, counting them again and again, hoping somehow they would multiply through sheer force of wishing. But mathematics is cruelly accurate, and no amount of hoping can turn pennies into dollars. She has only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim, her beloved husband. And she knows with painful certainty that this sum is woefully inadequate to express even a fraction of what she feels for him. Jim works long hours for modest wages, and while he never complains, Della sees how his coat grows shabbier each winter, how his shoes develop holes that he patches with cardboard, how he walks a little slower at the end of each day, weighed down not just by physical exhaustion but by the burden of wanting to give his wife more than their circumstances allow. Yet there is one possession that Jim treasures above all else, one beautiful object that connects him to his past and represents everything fine and valuable in his life. It is his pocket watch, a gold timepiece that belonged to his father and his grandfather before him. The watch itself is magnificent, its mechanisms precise and its case glowing with the rich patina that only time can bestow. But Jim has no chain worthy of such a watch. He carries it in his pocket on an old leather strap that has seen far better days, a makeshift solution that pains Della every time she sees it. She has found the perfect chain in a shop window downtown, a platinum fob chain that would complement the watch perfectly, its link simple and elegant, its clasp secure and well made. The chain costs $21, and Della has $1.87. The mathematics of this situation is impossible, and yet her heart refuses to accept impossibility. There must be a way. There must be something she can do. The answer, when it comes to her, arrives with the weight of inevitability. She turns from the mirror and reaches up to touch her hair one final time, feeling its silkiness slide through her fingers like water. She thinks of Jim, of his tired smile when he comes home each evening, of the way his eyes light up when he looks at her, of the thousand small kindnesses he shows her every day despite their poverty. She thinks of that beautiful watch, deserving of a beautiful chain. And she knows what she must do. The December air bites with cold as Della makes her way through the snowy streets to Madame Sofronie's establishment. The woman who owns the shop deals in hair, buying it from those who need money more than vanity, selling it to those who can afford wigs and hairpieces and elaborate coiffures. Madame Sofronie barely glances up when Della enters, but her eyes sharpen with interest when Della removes her hat and lets her hair fall around her shoulders. $20. Madame Sofronie says after a moment's appraisal, her voice flat and businesslike. Della nods, unable to speak around the lump in her throat. The scissors flash in the winter light, and her beautiful hair falls to the floor in long, shining ropes. When it is done, Della's head feels strange and light, her neck exposed to the cold in a way it has never been before. She looks into Madame Sofronie's mirror and sees a face she barely recognizes, shorn and boyish. Her features suddenly sharp without the softening frame of her long tresses. But in her hand, she holds 20 crisp dollar bills, and she knows exactly what she will do with them. The platinum chain is even more beautiful up close than it appeared in the shop window. Della imagines how Jim's face will look when he sees it, how perfectly it will complement his watch, how proud he will be to pull out that fine timepiece on its fine chain. The joy of anticipation fills her as she hurries home through the gathering dusk, her hand closed protectively around the small package in her pocket. Meanwhile, Jim Young has been wrestling with his own problem, his own mathematics of the impossible. He has been thinking of Della's beautiful hair, of how she deserves combs to hold it back, proper combs made of tortoiseshell and adorned with jewels, combs that would be worthy of such magnificent tresses. He has found such combs in an exclusive shop, combs that would make Della gasp with pleasure, combs that cost $20 and which he cannot afford. Not with his current resources. Not unless he makes a sacrifice. The pocket watch is heavy in his hands as he makes his way to the pawn shop. It gleams in the electric lights, its tick steady and sure, measuring out the seconds and minutes and hours of a life. His grandfather carried this watch. His father carried this watch. And now he, Jim Young, carries it still, or carried it until this moment. The pawnbroker offers him $20, and Jim takes the money without haggling. Some things are worth more than heirlooms. Some things are worth more than gold. That evening, when Jim arrives home, Della is waiting with dinner on the table and fear in her heart. She has tried to curl her short hair, to make it look fashionable rather than butchered, but she knows the truth of what she has done, knows how shocking her appearance must be. When Jim opens the door and sees her, he stops completely, staring with an expression Della cannot read. Is it anger? Disappointment? Regret? Jim, darling. She begins, her words tumbling over each other in her haste to explain. Don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut off and sold it because I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a present. It'll grow back. You won't mind, will you? I had to do it. My hair grows awfully fast. Say, Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice gift I've got for you. Jim seems to wake from his trance, and he takes Della into his arms, holding her close. Don't make any mistake about me, Dell. He says softly. I don't think there's anything in the way of a haircut or a shave or a shampoo that could make me love you any less. But if you'll unwrap that package you may see why I was surprised at first. Della's trembling fingers tear at the paper, and then she cries out in wonder and delight. There, nestled in tissue, are the combs. The beautiful combs she has admired for so long, the tortoise-shell combs with their delicate jeweled edges. They are perfect. They are beautiful. And they are completely useless, for she has no hair to hold them in any more. But Della's cry of joy turns to laughter, and she holds the combs up to her short hair, imagining the future when her locks will once again be long enough to wear these treasures. "My hair grows so fast, Jim," she says. And then, remembering her own gift, she pulls out the platinum chain and holds it out to him with shining eyes. "And isn't it a dandy? I hunted all over town to find it. You'll have to look at the time 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how it looks on it." Jim sinks down onto the couch and begins to laugh, a sound that mingles joy and sorrow in equal measure. "Dell," he says, "let's put our Christmas presents away and keep them for a while. They're too nice to use just at present. I sold the watch to get the money to buy your combs. And now suppose you put the chops on." They sit together in their small apartment, their gifts useless but their love magnified by what they have done for each other. They have given up their most precious possessions, each for the other, and in doing so, they have demonstrated a truth that transcends material value. They are the wisest of all gift givers, these two. Because they have understood what many never learn, that the greatest gift is not what is given but the love that inspires the giving. Their treasures may be temporarily useless, but their hearts are forever enriched. Now our journey takes us across the ocean to Germany, to a time when Christmas was celebrated with particular magic in the cities and villages of that snow-covered land. It is Christmas Eve in the home of the Stahlbaum family, and excitement thrums through the house like music. The Christmas tree stands in the parlor, its branches heavy with ornaments and candles, its top crowned with a silver star that catches and throws back the light in dancing fragments. Beneath the tree, wrapped packages wait in mysterious silence, and throughout the house, the scent of cinnamon and baked apples mingles with the sharp, clean fragrance of pine. Young Clara Stahlbaum can barely contain her anticipation. She is 8 years old, with wide eyes full of wonder and a heart that believes absolutely in magic. Her brother Fritz, slightly older and determined to appear more sophisticated, pretends to be less excited than he truly is, but Clara sees through his pretense. They are both waiting for the same thing, the arrival of their godfather, Herr Drosselmeyer, who always brings the most extraordinary gifts. Herr Drosselmeyer is a mysterious figure, tall and thin, with silver hair pulled back from a high forehead and eyes that seem to see beyond the ordinary world into realms of imagination. He is a clockmaker by trade, a maker of intricate mechanisms that whir and tick with mathematical precision, but Clara has always suspected that his skills extend beyond mere mechanics into the realm of true enchantment. His workshop is filled with wonders, automatons that move with uncanny grace. Music boxes that play melodies no one has heard before, clocks that seem to measure not just time but the movement of dreams. When Drosselmeyer arrives that Christmas Eve, he brings with him a large box and an air of suppressed excitement. The family gathers around as he opens the package, revealing his gift, a magnificent castle populated with mechanical figures that move through their paces when he winds a hidden key. Lords and ladies dance in miniature ballrooms, soldiers march across battlements, and tiny horses pull coaches around courtyard tracks. It is a masterpiece. And Fritz immediately claims it as his favorite thing in all the world. But Drosselmeyer has not forgotten Clara. From his coat pocket, he produces a smaller package, wrapped in simple paper and tied with ribbon. Clara takes it with trembling hands and unwraps it carefully, revealing a wooden figure about 9 inches tall. It is a Nutcracker, carved and painted to resemble a soldier or perhaps a prince, with a broad face, prominent teeth, and bright, cheerful clothing. His uniform is red with gold trim, his tall hat sits at a jaunty angle. And in his hands he holds a sword. His purpose is practical, to crack the hard shells of nuts so the sweet meat inside can be enjoyed, but to Clara, he is beautiful. Fritz laughs at the Nutcracker, mocking its large head and prominent jaw. He snatches it from Clara's hands and immediately tests it with the hardest nut he can find, forcing the mechanism beyond what it can bear. There is a sharp crack, and the Nutcracker's jaw breaks, hanging loosely and making the figure look even more strange and misshapen. Clara cries out in dismay and rescues her Nutcracker from Fritz's rough handling, cradling the damaged toy in her arms like an injured bird. Drosselmeyer repairs the Nutcracker with quick, skilled hands, binding its jaw with a small handkerchief like a bandage. He tells Clara that the Nutcracker will be good as new by morning, but she can see that he is moved by her distress, by the tenderness with which she holds the damaged toy. He looks at her for a long moment, and she has the strange feeling that he is seeing something beyond this moment, beyond this night, into a future she cannot yet imagine. As the evening progresses, the family celebrates with food and music. The candles on the Christmas tree burn lower, their flames dancing in the warm air rising from the fireplace. Clara can barely taste the gingerbread and marzipan she loves so much, her attention constantly drawn back to her Nutcracker, which she has placed carefully on a side table where Fritz cannot reach it. When at last it is time for bed, Clara is reluctant to leave the parlor. But her mother insists, and she climbs the stairs to her room with leaden steps. But Clara cannot sleep. She lies in her bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking of her Nutcracker waiting alone downstairs. What if Fritz comes back and damages him further? What if he falls from the table and breaks completely? The worry grows until she can bear it no longer. She slips out of bed, wraps her robe around herself, and creeps down the dark staircase to the parlor. The room looks different in the darkness. The Christmas tree, which seemed so friendly and bright with candles lit, now looms like a forest giant, its branches creating strange shadows on the walls. The furniture seems larger, the distances between things stretched and strange. Clara retrieves her Nutcracker and sits on the sofa, holding him close, singing him a soft lullaby as if he were a living thing that could be comforted by her voice. The clock on the mantel begins to strike midnight, and with each chime, the room seems to shiver and change. Clara blinks, and when she opens her eyes, everything has grown enormous around her, or perhaps she has shrunk, becoming small as a mouse, tiny as a doll. The Christmas tree now towers overhead like an ancient pine in a primeval forest, its ornaments the size of boulders, its candles like great pillars of flame. And all around her, she hears strange sounds, scurrying, scratching, the whisper of many small feet. From the darkness, they emerge, mice, but not ordinary mice. These creatures stand on their hind legs like men, and they wear uniforms and carry weapons. They come in waves, an army of rodents, and at their head marches the Mouse King, larger than all the rest, with 7 heads and 7 crowns, his eyes glinting with malice in the dim light. Clara shrinks back in terror as the mouse army advances, their numbers seeming endless. Their purpose clearly hostile. But then movement catches her eye, and she sees something that stops her heart with wonder. The toys beneath the Christmas tree are coming to life. The toy soldiers that were Fritz's favorite are marching forth, forming ranks, preparing to defend against the mouse invasion. And leading them, transformed from damaged wooden toy to noble warrior, is Clara's Nutcracker. He stands tall now, his earlier awkwardness replaced by grace and courage. His sword, which seemed like a toy ornament before, now gleams with real purpose. He rallies the toy soldiers and leads them into battle against the mouse horde, his voice ringing clear and strong in the transformed parlor. The battle that follows is fierce and fantastical, with toy soldiers and mice clashing in miniature combat while Clara watches from her position on the sofa, now as large to her as a king's throne. The battle rages back and forth, neither side gaining clear advantage. The Nutcracker fights bravely, his sword flashing in the firelight, but the Mouse King is powerful and cunning, and his 7 heads attack from multiple directions. The Nutcracker is driven back, pressed hard, beginning to weaken. Clara can see that he is losing, can see the Mouse King preparing for a final, fatal blow. She cannot bear it. Her Nutcracker, her dear wooden soldier, cannot fall to these terrible mice. Without thinking, Clara pulls off her slipper and hurls it with all her strength at the Mouse King. The slipper flies true, striking the creature in his central head, and in that moment of distraction, the Nutcracker recovers and delivers a decisive blow with his sword. The Mouse King falls, his army scatters in confusion and retreat, and victory belongs to the toys. But the transformation is not complete. As Clara watches, the Nutcracker's form begins to change once more. The wooden stiffness melts away, the painted features become real flesh, and standing before her is a handsome young man dressed in princely garments, his face filled with gratitude and wonder. He is the Nutcracker Prince, freed from an enchantment that had held him trapped in wooden form, and it is Clara's courage and love that has broken the spell. The prince bows to Clara and extends his hand. "Come," he says, his voice warm and musical. "Let me show you my kingdom, to thank you for what you have done." Clara takes his hand, and together they walk toward the Christmas tree. As they approach, a magical transformation overtakes everything. The tree's branches become a forest of snow-laden pines, the ornaments transform into icicles and frost flowers, and a path opens before them, leading into a winter wonderland beyond anything Clara has ever imagined. They journey through the land of snow, where snowflakes dance like living creatures, swirling in patterns of impossible beauty. They are not cold, these snowflakes, they are warm and welcoming, and they bow to Clara as she passes, recognizing her as the girl who saved their prince. The Snow Queen herself appears, regal and kind, and she leads them through her realm, showing Clara the beauty of winter in its purest, most magical form. From the land of snow, they travel to the kingdom of sweets, where the sugar plum fairy reigns over a land of confectionery delights. Here, everything is made of candy and cake and crystallized sugar. Rivers run with hot chocolate and lemonade, trees grow lollipops and candy canes, and the very buildings seem constructed from gingerbread and frosting. The sugar plum fairy welcomes Clara with joy, for word has already reached her kingdom about the brave girl who defeated the Mouse King and freed their prince. A grand celebration commences in Clara's honor. Dancers from many lands perform for her entertainment. Spanish chocolate dances with fiery passion. Arabian coffee moves with mysterious grace. Chinese tea performs with delicate precision, and Russian candy leaps with exuberant energy. Each dance is more wonderful than the last, each movement telling a story without words, each gesture a gift offered to Clara in gratitude. Finally, the sugar plum fairy herself dances. Her movements fluid as water, graceful as wind, accompanied by music that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, a melody that speaks directly to the heart. The Nutcracker Prince stands beside Clara, and she can feel the connection between them, a bond forged through danger and magic, through her act of saving him and his act of showing her wonders beyond imagination. But even the most beautiful dream must end. As the dance concludes and the applause fades, Clara feels herself growing heavy, feels the magical realm beginning to blur around the edges. The Nutcracker Prince takes her hand one final time, and his eyes hold both joy and sadness. Remember, he tells her, that magic lives where love lives, and that courage like yours can break any enchantment. Our journey now takes us to a darker corner of winter, to a story that carries both sorrow and hope in equal measure. This tale comes to us from the imagination of Hans Christian Andersen, the great Danish storyteller who understood that the deepest truths often were the clothes of fairy tales. It is the last evening of the year. New Year's Eve in a city that could be anywhere, though Andersen said it in the Copenhagen he knew so well. Snow falls heavily, and the wind cuts through the streets like a blade made of ice. Through these cruel streets walks a little girl, barefoot despite the snow, bareheaded despite the wind. She is very young, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, with pale blonde hair and eyes the color of winter sky. She carries matches to sell, bundles of them held in her frozen hands, more matches stuffed into the pockets of her thin apron. Matches! Matches, she calls out, but her voice is small and weak. Easily swallowed by the wind and the noise of celebration that spills from the windows of houses where families gather for their New Year's feasting. The little girl has been walking and calling for hours now, since early morning when her father sent her out. "Don't come home without money," he told her, his voice harsh from drink, his eyes hard with their own particular hunger. So she walks and calls, though her feet have long since lost all feeling, though her fingers are so stiff with cold that she can barely hold the matches anymore. She did have shoes when she left home this morning. Her mother's old slippers, far too large for her small feet but better than nothing against the snow. But the slippers were so loose that when a carriage came rushing down the street and she had to jump aside to avoid being trampled, one slipper was lost completely, and the other was snatched up by a young boy who ran away laughing, saying he would use it as a cradle for his mouse. So now her feet are bare, blue-white with cold. And each step she takes leaves a small trail of blood from the cuts the ice makes in her tender skin. As evening deepens toward night, the streets grow more crowded with revelers, people bundled in furs and fine coats, laughing and singing as they make their way to parties and celebrations. They brush past the little match girl without seeing her, or if they do see her, they look away quickly, uncomfortable with the sight of such poverty on this festive evening. No one stops to buy her matches. No one offers her a penny or a kind word. She is invisible in her misery. A ghost haunting the edges of their celebration. In a corner where two houses meet, creating a small alcove that offers some shelter from the wind, the little match girl finally stops walking. She can go no further. Her legs are trembling too much to carry her, and she knows, with the terrible knowledge that children sometimes possess, that if she goes home without selling any matches, without bringing home any money, her father will beat her. But perhaps staying here in the cold is preferable to that. Perhaps if she rests for just a moment, gathers her strength, something will change. Some kindness will find her. She looks down at the matches in her hands, and a thought comes to her, tempting and dangerous. Just one match, struck and held for a moment, would bring warmth to her frozen fingers. Just one tiny match, what harm could that do? And yet she knows that each match represents potential money, that her father counts them carefully, that he will know if even one is missing. But the cold is so fierce, so biting, so cruel in its intensity. Surely one match won't be missed. Surely she deserves this one tiny comfort. With trembling hands, she strikes a match against the wall. The flame catches, bright and warm, and in that instant, the world transforms around her. The fire is not merely a light, it is a window into another reality. As she stares into the flame, she sees not the dark, cold corner where she huddles, but a magnificent iron stove, its door open, its interior blazing with generous heat. The warmth reaches out to her, envelopes her. And for a moment she feels truly warm for the first time in hours, perhaps for the first time in days. She stretches out her frozen feet toward the stove, eager for the heat to reach her toes, but as she does so, the match burns down to her fingers, and the flame dies. The stove vanishes instantly, completely, and she is back in the cold corner with nothing but a burned-out match in her hand and the darkness pressing close around her. But the vision has given her an idea, or perhaps the cold has confused her thinking past the point of reason. She strikes another match, and this time she sees a table laden with a feast, the kind of meal she has only glimpsed through windows, a roasted goose, golden and glistening, surrounded by potatoes and vegetables, steam rising from everything in aromatic clouds. Even more miraculous, the goose suddenly rises from its platter. The serving fork and knife still stuck in its back, and begins to waddle toward her across the table, coming to her, offering itself to her, this starving child with empty belly and desperate hunger. But again, the match burns out, and the feast vanishes like a beautiful lie. The little match girl sits in darkness once more, and her stomach aches with a hunger that is beyond merely physical. It is a hunger of the soul, a longing not just for food but for warmth, for kindness. For a place at a table where she is welcome and wanted. She strikes a third match, and now she sees a Christmas tree, the most beautiful Christmas tree imaginable. It is taller than the tallest building, and it blazes with 1,000 candles, their lights twinkling like stars brought down to earth. The tree is decorated with beautiful ornaments, colored glass balls and golden angels, silver tinsel and strings of crystallized sugar. Under its branches, wrapped presents are piled high, and the little match girl knows, somehow she knows, that these presents are meant for children, for boys and girls who will wake up tomorrow morning to the joy of gifts, to the celebration of being loved and remembered. The match burns out, but this time something strange happens. The candles on the tree, instead of disappearing, begin to rise, lifting up into the night sky, transforming into stars that climb higher and higher until they join their fellow stars in the heavens above. And as the little match girl watches this miraculous ascent, one star detaches itself from the others and falls, leaving a trail of light across the darkness, and she remembers something her grandmother once told her. The only person who ever showed her true kindness and love. When a star falls, her grandmother said, it means someone is dying, and their soul is going up to heaven. The memory of her grandmother, who died just months ago, fills the little match girl with such longing that she can barely breathe. Her grandmother was the one good thing in her hard life, the one person who held her and told her she was precious, who gave her bread when she was hungry and warmth when she was cold. Now her grandmother is gone, and the little match girl is alone in the world with no one to protect her, no one to care whether she lives or dies. With hands that have gone beyond trembling into a strange, dreamy stillness, she strikes another match. And in the light of this flame, her grandmother appears, not as a memory or a vision, but as a presence, real and solid and smiling with infinite love. The grandmother is dressed in light, her face radiant with joy, her arms open wide to embrace her granddaughter. "Grandmother," the little match girl cries out, and for the first time this terrible evening, she feels not cold but warm, not hungry but filled, not afraid but safe. "Oh, take me with you. I know you will disappear when the match goes out, just like the stove and the food and the Christmas tree. Don't leave me. Don't let me be alone again." Desperately, terrified of losing this vision of her beloved grandmother, the little match girl strikes the entire bundle of remaining matches all at once. They flare up with brilliant light, bright as day, bright as summer noon, and in that radiance her grandmother stands clearer than ever, more beautiful, more real, more present than anything else in the world. The grandmother reaches down and takes the child into her arms, lifting her up gently, tenderly, with infinite care. She rises with the little girl held close to her heart, rising up and up, away from the cold corner and the dark street, away from hunger and fear and cruelty, rising into a place where there is no cold and no pain, only warmth and light and love eternal. In the morning, when the first light of the new year touches the city, people hurrying about their business find the little match girl still sitting in the corner where the two houses meet. She is frozen solid, her body stiff with death, her face turned upward toward the sky. Around her on the ground lie the burned-out matches, a small pile of spent sticks, evidence of her desperate attempt to stay warm. Some passers-by shake their heads sadly and comment on the tragedy of it. How terrible that a child should freeze to death on New Year's Eve. But then they move on, for they have their own concerns, their own lives to live. What they do not see, what they cannot see, is the smile on the little match girl's face. It is a smile of pure joy, of perfect peace, as if in her final moments she saw something so beautiful that it transformed death from terror into welcome. They do not know that her grandmother came for her, that she was not alone at the end, that she went from cold to warmth, from hunger to fullness, from suffering to joy. This story, so sad and so beautiful, reminds us of truths we might wish to ignore but cannot, truths about the hardness of the world and the suffering of the innocent. But it also reminds us that love transcends death, that kindness matters even in its absence, and that somewhere beyond the cold and darkness, there is light and warmth waiting for all who suffer. The little match girl's journey ends not in tragedy but in transformation, not in loneliness but in reunion. And perhaps that is the greatest comfort winter stories can offer, the promise that every cold night eventually gives way to morning, and that love never truly dies. Now we return to America, to one of the most beloved Christmas poems ever written, a work that has shaped our modern image of Santa Claus and Christmas Eve more than any other single piece of literature. The poem was first published anonymously in 1823, but we now know it was written by Clement Clarke Moore, a professor and poet who created these immortal lines for his own children, never imagining that his words would echo through generations, would be recited in countless homes, would become as much a part of Christmas tradition as the holiday itself. The setting is simple, a home on Christmas Eve, somewhere in early 19th century America. Snow blankets the ground outside, and inside, a family has settled down for the night after completing all the rituals of Christmas preparation. The stockings have been hung by the chimney with care, carefully arranged so that each family member's stocking is in its proper place. The children are finally asleep after an evening of mounting excitement. Tucked into their beds and, one hopes, dreaming sweet dreams of sugar plums and toys and all the wonders that Christmas morning might bring. The father of this house, the narrator of our tale, has just settled down for what he expects will be a long winter's nap. His nightcap is properly adjusted, and his wife has arranged herself comfortably beside him. The house is quiet, peaceful, settled into that particular stillness that comes late on Christmas Eve, when anticipation has exhausted itself into patience and the whole world seems to be holding its breath, waiting for dawn and the magic it will bring. But sleep does not come easily to our narrator, not on this night. Perhaps he is thinking of the morning ahead, mentally reviewing whether all the preparations have been properly completed. Perhaps he is listening for the sounds of children sneaking out of bed, which parents throughout history have learned to anticipate on Christmas Eve. Or perhaps there is something else, some awareness that this night holds more than ordinary dreams, that magic is afoot in the world. What wakes him fully is a clatter, a noise that erupts from somewhere outside, loud enough to penetrate even the drowsy peace of the bedroom. It comes from the front lawn, a sound of movement and disturbance, and immediately the narrator is alert, concerned. What could be making such a noise at this hour? An animal? An intruder? Something gone wrong with the Christmas preparations left outside? He throws off his covers and hurries to the window, pulling aside the curtain to peer out into the winter night. The moon is full and bright, its light reflecting off the fresh fallen snow so brilliantly that the landscape is almost as clear as day. Everything glows with that peculiar luminosity that comes from moonlight on snow, a silvery radiance that transforms the ordinary world into something magical and strange. And there, visible in that moonlight, the narrator sees something that stops his heart with wonder. 8 reindeer, tiny as toys from this distance but clearly alive and moving with purpose. They are airborne, flying through the sky with the grace of birds, and they pull behind them a miniature sleigh. Even from here, even in the uncertain light, the narrator can see that the sleigh is packed full of toys. Bulging with packages and presents, a vehicle clearly designed for a very particular purpose. The reindeer fly in perfect formation, their hooves making no sound against the air, their antlers proud against the moonlit sky. The sleigh driver stands in his vehicle, handling the reins with expert ease, and even at this distance, the narrator can tell that this is no ordinary person. This driver is small and round, dressed in fur from his head to his foot, and even through the darkness and distance, there is something unmistakably jolly about him. Something that suggests laughter and kindness and a heart full of Christmas cheer. The narrator knows, in that instant, what he is seeing. It is Saint Nicholas. It is Father Christmas. It is the legendary gift-bringer himself, traveling on his annual rounds, bringing joy to children throughout the world. The narrator's mind tries to grasp the impossibility of what he's witnessing, tries to apply reason to the image of flying reindeer and a man in a sleigh, but his heart knows better. Magic is real, at least on this night, at least in this moment. He watches as the reindeer turn, guided by their driver, and head directly toward his house. They come closer, closer, and now he can hear the driver's voice, calling out to his team by name. Now, Dasher. Now, Dancer. Now, Prancer and Vixen. On, Comet. On, Cupid. On, Donner and Blitzen. The names roll out like poetry, like music, and the reindeer respond to each name with renewed energy, pulling the sleigh with greater speed and purpose. They don't land in the street or the front yard. Instead, they make straight for the roof of the house, and the narrator watches in amazement as the entire team, sleigh and all, settles onto his rooftop as lightly as snowfall, as gently as a feather touching down on water. How is this possible? How can reindeer stand on a slanted roof? How can a sleigh full of toys rest on shingles without sliding off? But these are questions that belong to the ordinary world, and tonight, the ordinary world has given way to something extraordinary. The narrator pulls back from the window and rushes to the fireplace. If Saint Nicholas is on the roof, then surely he will be coming down the chimney, as legend says he does. The narrator waits, his heart pounding with an excitement he hasn't felt since he was a child himself, an anticipation that makes him feel young again, makes him remember what it was like to believe absolutely in the impossible. And then, with a rush of soot and a sound like wind moving through a narrow space, Saint Nicholas arrives. He comes down the chimney with surprising grace for a man of his build, emerging into the room covered in ash but somehow still immaculate in his red fur suit. The narrator can only stare, trying to take in every detail of this legendary figure who has been described in stories but never, he had thought, truly seen. Saint Nicholas is dressed all in fur, from his head to his foot, and his clothes are tarnished with ashes and soot from his passage through the chimney. A bundle of toys he has flung on his back, carried like a peddler's pack, and he looks for all the world like a merchant opening his shop as he sets down this burden and begins to go about his work. His eyes, oh his eyes, how they twinkle. His dimples, how merry. His cheeks are like roses, his nose like a cherry. And his mouth is drawn up like a bow, creating an expression of permanent cheerfulness that seems incapable of producing any expression other than a smile. His beard is white as the snow outside, falling in soft waves to his chest, and his round belly shakes when he laughs like a bowl full of jelly. He is stout and plump, looking altogether like a right jolly old elf, though of course he is taller than any elf the narrator has read about in tales. There is something comforting about his size, something that suggests abundance and generosity, a person who has never gone hungry and has made it his mission to ensure that others, particularly children, never go hungry either for food or for joy. Saint Nicholas goes about his work with practiced efficiency, pulling toys from his pack and filling the stockings that hang by the chimney. He knows which stocking belongs to which child without being told, knows what each child has wished for without consulting any list. The toys he produces seem endless, emerging from his pack in quantities that shouldn't be able to fit in any normal bag, but then, nothing about this night is normal. As he works, he speaks not a word, maintaining a concentration on his task that is almost reverent. This is his purpose, his calling, his annual gift to the world, to bring joy to children, to manifest the spirit of giving that Christmas represents. He is not disturbed by the narrator's presence, though surely he must know he is being watched. Perhaps he is used to being observed, or perhaps on this magical night, the normal rules about visibility and observation don't apply. He fills the last stocking and turns to leave, and as he does, he lays a finger aside of his nose and gives a knowing nod. It is a gesture that suggests secrets shared, wisdom passed down, an acknowledgement of the magic that the narrator has witnessed. And then, in a movement as impossible as everything else this night has brought, Saint Nicholas goes straight up the chimney, vanishing as quickly as he appeared, returning to his waiting sleigh and reindeer. The narrator rushes back to the window in time to see Saint Nicholas take his position in the sleigh, to hear him give a whistle to his team. The reindeer leap from the roof as if gravity is merely a suggestion they choose not to follow, and away they all fly, like the down from a thistle, light and swift and seemingly effortless. The sleigh and its driver and the 8 magnificent reindeer rise into the night sky, growing smaller and smaller, until they are no more than a speck against the moon, and then they are gone completely, vanished into the winter darkness. But before he disappears from sight, the narrator hears Saint Nicholas call out, his voice carrying clearly through the cold night air, a benediction and a blessing, words that seem directed not just at this house or this family but at the whole world. Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night. The narrator stands at the window for a long moment, watching the empty sky, replaying the events of the night in his mind. Has he truly seen what he thinks he saw? Was Saint Nicholas really here, in his home, filling the stockings of his children with toys from a magical pack? Or was it perhaps a dream, a vision brought on by the excitement of the season and too much Christmas punch? Our journey now takes us deep into the realm of Hans Christian Andersen once more, to perhaps his longest and most elaborate fairy tale, a story that sprawls across 7 chapters and takes us through landscapes both real and fantastical. This is the tale of the Snow Queen, of true friendship tested by impossible obstacles, of the warmth of the human heart standing against the coldness of magic and winter. We begin in a city where 2 families live next door to each other. Their homes so close that the roof gardens of each house touch, allowing the residents to step from one dwelling to the other with ease. In one home lives a little boy named Kai, and in the other lives a little girl named Gerda, and they are the dearest of friends, as close as brother and sister, sharing everything from secrets to the rosebushes that grow in pots in their adjoining roof gardens. These children live in innocence and joy, but far away, in a realm of ice and bitter cold, there exists a queen of winter, a being of terrible beauty and frozen heart who rules over the domain of snow and ice. The Snow Queen rides through winter skies in a sleigh pulled by the wind itself, and where she passes, flowers freeze and warmth dies. She is magnificent and terrible, and she is always searching, always seeking, though what she seeks she may not even know herself. One winter evening, as Kai and Gerda sit together by the window watching snow fall, Kai's grandmother tells them about the Snow Queen. When the snow swarms outside, she says, that is the Snow Queen's bees gathering. And sometimes, in the very coldest weather, the Snow Queen herself presses her face against the window glass. Let her come, Kai says boldly, young enough to not understand the danger in such a challenge. I would put her on the hot stove and watch her melt. But that very night, something terrible happens. Splinters of an evil mirror, a mirror made by demons to mock the goodness of the world, find their way to Kai. One splinter pierces his eye, another lodges in his heart, and immediately everything changes. The mirror has the power to make beautiful things look ugly and to magnify anything mean or bad until it fills the whole field of vision. With the splinters inside him, Kai becomes a different boy. He mocks Gerda, destroys the rosebushes that they tended together, and finds fault with everything he once loved. Then, one day in winter, Kai takes his sled to the town square where children are sledding down the snowy streets. A magnificent white sleigh pulls up, larger than any Kai has ever seen, and its driver is dressed all in white fur. Impulsively, Kai ties his small sled to the back of this grand sleigh, meaning to get a free ride. But the sleigh doesn't stop at the edge of town. It accelerates, moving faster and faster, pulling Kai along behind it. And when he tries to untie his sled, he finds the knots have frozen solid. The sleigh races out of the town and into the countryside, moving with impossible speed, and Kai is terrified but unable to free himself. Finally, the sleigh stops, and the driver stands and turns to look at Kai. It is a woman of breathtaking beauty, tall and slender, dressed in white that sparkles like snow in starlight. Her skin is white as ice, her eyes are blue as frozen lakes, and her lips, when she smiles, are the blue-white of something that has never known warmth. It is the Snow Queen, and she is far more terrifying than Kai's grandmother's stories ever suggested. "Are you cold?" the Snow Queen asks. Her voice like wind whistling through empty spaces. When Kai nods, shivering violently, she leans down and kisses him on the forehead. The kiss is colder than ice, and it goes straight to Kai's heart, which is already half frozen from the mirror splinter. With that kiss, Kai forgets everything, his home, his grandmother, Gerda, the rosebushes, everything warm and good and human about his life. All he knows now is the Snow Queen. And she lifts him into her sleigh and wraps her white fur cloak around him, and he feels warm at last, though it is the warmth of freezing to death, the false comfort that comes just before the end. The Snow Queen's palace is far to the north, beyond civilization, beyond the borders of maps, in a place where winter reigns eternal. The palace itself is made entirely of snow and ice, with walls that are formed from driven snow and windows and doors cut by sharp winds. There are more than 100 halls in this palace, the largest of them many miles in extent, all illuminated by the northern lights, all vast and empty and glittering and cold. And at the center of this frozen realm sits the Snow Queen on her throne, with Kai at her feet, his heart frozen, his mind filled with ice crystals, all memory of his former life erased. But Gerda has not forgotten. Gerda, whose heart has no ice in it, whose love remains warm and true, knows only that Kai has vanished and that she must find him. Spring comes, and Kai does not return. Summer arrives, and still there is no sign of him. The adults in Gerda's life assume that Kai has drowned, that he is dead and gone, but Gerda refuses to believe it. She can feel in her heart that Kai lives, and if he lives, she can find him. She sets out on her journey wearing only her prettiest dress and her new red shoes, carrying nothing but her love and determination. She comes first to a river and asks the water if it has seen Kai, if it has carried him away. The river seems to suggest that she should throw her precious red shoes into the current as an offering, and though this breaks Gerda's heart, she does it, throwing first one shoe and then the other. But the river returns the shoes to her. For they are not the price that must be paid for information. Gerda's journey takes her through many adventures. She comes to a garden where an old woman who understands magic tries to keep her, making Gerda forget her quest by surrounding her with flowers and pleasant forgetfulness. But Gerda sees a rose, and the rose reminds her of the rosebushes she shared with Kai, and the memory breaks the spell. She escapes and continues her search. She meets a crow who tells her of a prince who has recently married. And Gerda wonders if this prince might be Kai. She makes her way to the castle and meets the prince and princess, who are kind and generous but are not Kai. Still, they help Gerda, giving her warm clothes and a golden carriage and servants to accompany her on her journey. But robbers attack the carriage, and Gerda is captured by a fierce little robber girl who is lonely and wild and looking for a companion. The robber girl keeps Gerda prisoner but also listens to her story, and something in Gerda's love for her friend touches even the robber girl's hardened heart. She has 2 doves and a reindeer as captives, and from them, Gerda learns that Kai was seen traveling north with the Snow Queen. The robber girl, moved by Gerda's devotion, decides to help. She frees the reindeer and tells him to carry Gerda north, to help her find her friend. The reindeer knows the North Country, knows where the Snow Queen's palace stands. He carries Gerda through landscapes that grow colder and more barren, through regions where nothing grows and no one lives. They come to Lapland, where a woman who knows magic reads Gerda's story in dried fish and tells them they must go even further north. They travel to Finland, to the very edge of the world, where another wise woman confirms what Gerda already knows. The power to save Kai lies not in magic spells or supernatural strength but in the purity of Gerda's heart, in the love she carries for her friend. At last, Gerda reaches the Snow Queen's palace. It is protected by snowflakes that have come alive as the Snow Queen's guards, taking the form of porcupines and bears and serpents, creatures made of ice and wind. But when Gerda prays, when she calls upon the warmth of her faith, angels appear and scatter the ice guards. She walks into the palace unopposed, protected by love and innocence. The Snow Queen is not at home when Gerda arrives. She has traveled away, gone to spread winter across other lands. Kai sits alone in the vast, frozen throne room, blue with cold, sitting so still he might be a statue carved from ice. The Snow Queen has given him a puzzle to solve, ice crystals that must be arranged to spell out the word, eternity, and if he can solve it, she has promised him his freedom and a pair of skates made from the whole world. But his frozen fingers and frozen mind cannot solve the puzzle. Cannot create meaning from these fragments of ice. Gerda sees Kai and rushes to him, crying out his name, throwing her arms around him. But he doesn't recognize her. He doesn't respond at all. He simply sits there, cold and still and silent, and Gerda begins to weep, her hot tears falling on Kai's chest, melting through to his heart, warming the ice that has frozen it, dissolving the mirror splinter that has poisoned it. And Kai begins to cry. As his tears flow, they wash the splinter from his eye. And suddenly he can see clearly again. He recognizes Gerda, remembers everything he had forgotten, remembers love and home and warmth and all the good things he had lost. He weeps for joy and sorrow all at once, and Gerda weeps with him, and their shared tears are so hot and so full of feeling that they melt the ice crystals of the Snow Queen's puzzle, and the crystals rearrange themselves into the word, eternity, all on their own. With the puzzle solved, the Snow Queen's power over Kai is broken. He is free to leave, and he and Gerda make their way out of the palace, hand in hand. They retrace Gerda's journey, stopping at all the places where she found help, thanking those who aided her. The robber girl is glad to see them reunited, the princess and prince rejoice in their happiness, and the wise women of the north bless them on their way. When at last they return home, they find that everything is exactly as they left it. The roses still grow in their pots in the roof gardens, the doorways still connect their 2 houses. But Gerda and Kai themselves have changed. They are no longer children, though their journey seemed to take only a season. They are grown now, or nearly so, marked by their experiences, deepened by their trials. But they have not lost the essential things. They still have their faith. Their love for each other, their ability to see beauty and goodness in the world. They have learned that love is stronger than ice, that a warm heart can triumph over the coldest magic, that true friendship is worth any journey, any sacrifice. And they know, sitting together in their roof garden with the roses blooming around them, that some things, some precious things, can never be frozen, never stolen, never lost as long as we hold them in our hearts. Now we travel to Russia, to the vast forests and snow-covered steppes where winter reigns for half the year and the cold is not merely a season but a character in the story of life itself. This is the tale of Snegurochka, the Snow Maiden, a figure beloved in Russian folklore, whose story speaks to the eternal dance between winter's cold and the warmth of human love. Deep in a Russian forest, far from any village, there stood a small wooden cottage. Inside this humble dwelling lived an old man and an old woman, and though they were poor in material possessions, they had always been rich in industry and goodness. They worked hard, these two, keeping their little farm running, tending their animals, helping any traveler who might pass by their remote home. But there was one sorrow that shadowed their lives, one lack that made their hardship harder to bear: they had no children. They longed for a child, these two elderly people. They imagined what it would be like to hear young laughter in their home, to teach skills and stories to a young one, to have someone to care for and to love. In the evenings, as they sat by their fire, they would speak of this wish, of how different their lives would be if only they had a son or a daughter to share their days. Winter came, as it always did in Russia, arriving early and settling in for a long stay. The snow fell thick and deep, covering everything in white, muffling all sounds except the whistle of wind through the trees and the occasional crack of a branch breaking under the weight of ice. The old man and old woman stayed inside their cottage, keeping their fire burning, surviving on the stores they had laid up during the brief summer months. One morning, after a particularly heavy snowfall, the old man looked out his window and saw children from the nearest village playing in the snow. They were building snow figures, rolling great balls of snow and stacking them to make snowmen and snow animals. Their laughter carried clearly in the cold air, and the old man felt a renewed pang of longing. If only he and his wife had such joy in their lives. If only they had children to play in the snow. "Come," the old man said to his wife. "Let us go outside and build a snow child. We may be too old to have a real child, but at least we can make one from snow and pretend, just for a little while." The old woman agreed, and the two of them bundled up in their warmest clothes and went out into the snow. They worked together with surprising skill, shaping the snow with care and attention, creating not just a simple snowman but a detailed figure of a young girl. They gave her delicate features, a slender frame, graceful limbs. They dressed her in a little robe they fashioned from snow, gave her a crown of icicles. When they were done, they stood back and looked at their creation. And both of them felt tears come to their eyes. She was so beautiful, this Snow Maiden, so perfect in every detail. If only she were real. If only she could come alive and be the daughter they had always wanted. And then, as they watched, something miraculous happened. The Snow Maiden's eyes, which they had made from 2 pieces of coal, began to sparkle with real light. Her lips, which they had painted with the juice of frozen berries, curved into a smile. Her chest, which should have been solid snow, began to rise and fall with breath. She lifted her arms, turned her head, and stepped down from the place where they had built her. She was alive, truly alive, and she looked at the old man and old woman with eyes full of intelligence and love. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft and musical like wind chimes in a breeze. "Thank you for giving me form and life. I am Snegurochka, the Snow Maiden, and I will be your daughter if you will have me." The old man and old woman were speechless with joy. They embraced Snegurochka, who was cold to the touch but soft and real nonetheless, and they led her into their cottage. She moved through their home with a grace that seemed almost magical, and everything she touched seemed to glow a little brighter, seem a little more beautiful. She learned their routines quickly, helped with their chores, sang songs that seemed to come from somewhere beyond the ordinary world. She was everything they had dreamed of and more, the perfect daughter, the answer to their prayers. But Snegurochka was different from other children in important ways. She could not bear heat. When the old woman wanted her to sit near the fire, Snegurochka would move to the farthest corner of the room, looking uncomfortable and distressed. She ate no cooked food, only fresh snow and icicles and occasionally berries that had been frozen. When the sun shone too brightly through the windows, she would draw the curtains and hide in the shadows. She was a creature of winter. Born from snow and ice, and warmth was not friendly to her nature. The old man and old woman learned to accommodate these peculiarities. They kept their fire smaller, opened their windows to let in cold air, made sure that Snegurochka was always comfortable in their home. In return, she filled their lives with joy. She told them stories of the winter realm, of Father Frost who was her godfather, of the Snow Queen who was her teacher, of all the wonders that existed in the frozen places of the world. She sang them songs that made the very air shimmer, danced for them with movements as graceful as falling snow. She was their daughter, and they loved her with all their hearts. Winter passed in this way, with the three of them happy together in their small cottage. But winter, as all seasons must, began to give way to spring. The days grew longer, the sun rose higher in the sky, and the snow began to melt. Snegurochka grew more and more melancholy as spring approached. She would stand at the window, looking out at the dripping icicles and the exposed patches of brown earth, and tears would run down her pale cheeks. "What troubles you, daughter?" the old woman would ask, but Snegurochka could only shake her head, unable to put her fears into words. One day, a group of girls from the village came to the cottage and invited Snegurochka to come with them into the forest. It was a celebration of spring, they said, a tradition where young people would gather flowers and dance and leap over bonfires to welcome the warm season. The old man and old woman, who wanted Snegurochka to have friends her own age, encouraged her to go, not understanding the danger. Snegurochka went with the village girls, though every step away from the cottage felt like walking toward doom. The girls were kind to her, including her in their flower gathering and their songs. But as evening came and they prepared to light the bonfire, Snegurochka felt terror growing in her heart. She tried to stay away from the fire, to linger at the edge of the celebration, but the other girls insisted she join them. "It's tradition," they said. "Everyone must leap over the bonfire. It brings good luck for the coming year." One by one, the village girls ran toward the bonfire and leaped over the flames, landing safely on the other side, laughing and calling out to Snegurochka to follow. She stood at the fire's edge, feeling the heat radiate toward her, knowing what would happen if she got too close but unable to disappoint her friends, unable to break from the celebration. She ran toward the fire. She leaped. And as she passed over the flames, her body made of snow and ice and winter magic, she simply melted. She disappeared into steam and mist, rising up into the evening sky, vanishing completely, leaving no trace behind except for a little puddle of water on the ground and a sense of terrible loss in the hearts of all who witnessed it. The old man and old woman were devastated when the village girls returned and told them what had happened. They wept for their daughter, for the joy she had brought them and the void her absence left. They went into the forest looking for any sign of her, calling her name, hoping against hope that somehow she might return. And then, as they stood in the forest, mourning their loss, they felt a cold wind blow down from the north, and in that wind they heard a voice they recognized. It was Snegurochka, but not sad or gone. She was laughing, joyful, free. "Do not weep for me," her voice called down from the sky. "I have returned to my true home, to the realm of winter where I belong. But I am not gone from you. Each year, when winter comes again, I will return. I will be in every snowflake, every frost pattern on your window, every beautiful cold morning. I will bring you joy in the winter months, and you will feel my love in the season of snow. And I will never forget you, my dear parents, who gave me form and life and showed me what it means to be loved. From that day forward, the old man and old woman found comfort in winter. When the first snow fell each year, they would see Snegurochka in the frost and ice, would feel her presence in the cold wind. She kept her promise, returning each winter, bringing joy to their home, filling their lives with the magic of the season. And they knew that love, true love, transcends even the boundaries of seasons, that a daughter of snow is no less real than a daughter of flesh, and that family is built not from what we are made of but from the bonds of our hearts. Now we return to America once more, to a tale that is remarkably modern compared to the ancient stories we've been exploring, but which has become just as much a part of our Christmas tradition. This is the story of Rudolph, the misfit reindeer whose difference became his greatest gift, a tale that speaks to everyone who has ever felt like they didn't belong. At the North Pole, where Santa Claus lives and works throughout the year, the reindeer hold a special place. These are no ordinary reindeer, of course. These are flying reindeer, magical creatures who have the power to take flight and pull Santa's sleigh through the sky on Christmas Eve. To be chosen as one of Santa's sleigh team is the highest honor a reindeer can achieve, and every young reindeer at the North Pole dreams of growing strong enough and fast enough to one day join the famous 8. Dasher and Dancer, Prancer and Vixen, Comet and Cupid, Donner and Blitzen. When Donner the reindeer and his wife welcomed their first child, there was great celebration. The birth of a reindeer at the North Pole is always an occasion for joy, but this birth was particularly significant because Donner was one of Santa's most trusted team members, and everyone assumed his son would follow in his hoofprints. They named the baby Rudolph, and as his parents looked at him for the first time, they felt their hearts fill with pride and love. But then they noticed something strange. Rudolph's nose, which should have been black like all reindeer noses, was glowing. It shone with a bright red light, as if there were a lamp inside his snout, illuminating him from within. The light was so intense that it lit up the entire stable, casting red shadows on the walls and making the snow outside the window glow pink. Donner and his wife looked at each other in dismay. This was not normal. This was not how a reindeer should look. How would Rudolph ever join Santa's team with such a ridiculous nose? How would he ever be taken seriously by the other reindeer? They tried covering the nose with mud, tried wrapping it in cloth, but the red glow shone through everything. There was no hiding what Rudolph was. As Rudolph grew, his unusual nose became the source of constant mockery and exclusion. The other young reindeer, who should have been his friends and playmates, instead made fun of him mercilessly. They called him names. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, they would chant, had a very shiny nose. They wouldn't let him join in any reindeer games, not the running races or the flying practice or the friendly competitions that filled their days. Whenever Rudolph appeared, the others would laugh and point, making jokes about his nose, asking if he was trying to be a Christmas decoration or a lighthouse. Even the adult reindeer looked at Rudolph with disapproval. "That nose is a distraction," they said. "How can he focus on flying with that light shining in his face? How can he be part of a team when he draws so much attention to himself?" Only Rudolph's parents stood by him, loving him despite his difference, but even they sometimes wished their son could just be normal, could just fit in with the other reindeer. Rudolph grew up lonely and sad. He tried to hide his nose, tried to stay away from other reindeer, tried to make himself as invisible as possible despite having the most visible nose at the North Pole. He would wander off by himself, exploring the snowy wilderness, watching the northern lights dance across the sky, wondering why he had to be different, what purpose could possibly be served by a nose that glowed like a red beacon? But Rudolph was not entirely alone. There was another misfit at the North Pole, an elf named Hermie who was just as out of place as Rudolph. While all the other elves were perfectly content making toys in Santa's workshop, Hermie dreamed of being a dentist. He wanted to help people, to fix teeth, to make mouths healthy. The other elves thought this was ridiculous and wouldn't let him leave his post at the toy assembly line. Rudolph and Hermie found each other one day when both were hiding from the others, and they recognized in each other the pain of being different. They became friends, these two misfits, and they decided to run away together, to find a place where they could be themselves without judgment or mockery. They set off into the wilderness, having no clear destination but feeling that anywhere would be better than where they were. They soon met a prospector named Yukon Cornelius who was searching for silver and gold in the frozen north. Yukon was loud and boisterous, but he was also kind, and he didn't care at all about Rudolph's nose or Hermie's dreams. He welcomed them as companions and took them along on his adventures. Their journey led them to many strange places, including the island of Misfit Toys, a sad and lonely place where toys that were somehow defective or unwanted went to wait, hoping that someday a child would want them. There was Charlie in the Box, who was just like a Jack-in-the-Box except for his name, and a doll named Sue who had emotional problems, and a train with square wheels, and many other toys that were perfectly good except for being slightly different from what was expected. Rudolph, Hermie, and Yukon promised the Misfit Toys that they would tell Santa about them, that they would make sure these toys found homes. But Rudolph still couldn't shake his sadness. Even here, among other misfits, he felt like his glowing nose made him too different, too visible, too much of a problem. Meanwhile, back at the North Pole, Christmas Eve was approaching, and a terrible storm was building. The sky grew dark, fog rolled in from every direction, and snow fell so thickly that visibility dropped to nearly zero. Santa looked out at the worsening weather and shook his head grimly. "I can't fly in this," he said. "I won't be able to see where I'm going. The fog is too thick, the snow is blinding. I'm afraid we'll have to cancel Christmas this year." The elves and reindeer were horrified. Cancel Christmas? Disappoint all the children in the world? It seemed impossible, unbearable. But what could they do? Even magical reindeer couldn't fly safely in these conditions. They would crash into mountains, miss their destinations, get lost in the storm. It was too dangerous to attempt. Just then, Rudolph returned to the North Pole, having realized that running away didn't solve anything, that he needed to face his problems rather than flee from them. When he walked into the stable, his nose glowing brightly in the darkness of the storm, Santa suddenly stopped pacing and stared at him. "That nose!" Santa exclaimed. "That wonderful, glowing nose! Rudolph, your nose might be the answer to our problem." Everyone turned to look at Rudolph. And for the first time, they were not looking at him with mockery or disapproval but with hope and excitement. Santa explained his idea: if Rudolph would lead the sleigh team, his bright nose could light the way through the fog and snow. He could be like a beacon, guiding them safely to every house, helping them find their way through the storm that threatened to cancel Christmas. Rudolph could hardly believe what he was hearing. After all the mockery, all the exclusion, all the years of being treated as a problem rather than a gift, suddenly his unusual nose was exactly what was needed. His difference, his strangeness, the very thing that made him a misfit, was now the solution to an impossible problem. "Will you do it, Rudolph?" Santa asked. "Will you lead my sleigh tonight?" Rudolph felt his heart swell with pride and purpose. "Yes," he said simply. "Yes, I will." That Christmas Eve, Rudolph stood at the front of Santa's team, his nose shining brighter than ever, lighting up the sky like a red star. Behind him came all the other reindeer, the same ones who had mocked him and excluded him, but now they were following him, relying on him, grateful for him. They flew through the terrible storm, and Rudolph's nose showed them the way. They visited every house, delivered every present, brought joy to every child, all because of Rudolph's unique gift. When they returned to the North Pole, everyone gathered around Rudolph, celebrating him, thanking him, calling him a hero. The reindeer who had once laughed at him now loved him and included him. They made up a song about him, a joyful tune that celebrated his glowing nose and his bravery. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, you'll go down in history. And Rudolph learned the most important lesson of all, that the things that make us different, the qualities that make us stand out or seem strange, are often the very things that make us special. What we think of as flaws can actually be gifts, waiting for the right moment to shine. Being normal is overrated. Being yourself, embracing what makes you unique, that is where true strength lies. Our next tale takes us to a small town in America on a day when winter has blanketed everything in fresh, perfect snow. School has let out for the Christmas holidays, and children are pouring into the streets, their voices raised in excitement, their hands already forming snowballs and starting to build snow forts. Among these children, a particularly energetic group has gathered in the town square, where there is plenty of room and plenty of snow for their ambitious project. "Let's build the biggest snowman ever," one child shouts, and the others agree with enthusiasm. They set to work rolling snow, creating 3 large balls to stack one atop another, a large base for the body, a medium ball for the torso, and a smaller sphere for the head. They work together, laughing and playing, packing more snow onto their creation to make it stable and solid. While the children are building, a magician named Professor Hinkle is performing in the town square, trying to attract an audience for his show. But Professor Hinkle is not a very good magician. His tricks fail, his rabbit won't cooperate, and his grand finale, pulling a rabbit from his top hat, ends with an empty hat and a rabbit that has somehow escaped and is nowhere to be found. The few people who stop to watch drift away, and Professor Hinkle is left alone, angry and humiliated. In his frustration, Professor Hinkle throws his hat on the ground. "This stupid old hat never worked anyway," he declares, and he storms off, leaving the black silk top hat lying in the snow. The children, meanwhile, have nearly finished their snowman. They've added stick arms, button eyes, and a carrot nose. Someone has contributed a corncob pipe and a scarf, and now they're looking for something to put on the snowman's head. One of the children, a little girl named Karen, spots Professor Hinkle's discarded hat lying in the snow nearby. "Look," she says. "A perfect hat for our snowman." The children pick up the hat and place it on the snowman's head, and the moment they do, something magical happens. The hat begins to glow with a soft, warm light. The snowman's button eyes blink. His carrot nose twitches. His stick arms move, flexing as if testing their new mobility. And then, most miraculous of all, the snowman speaks. "Happy birthday," he says in a jolly, cheerful voice, because being born is the only thing he knows, and it seems appropriate to celebrate. The children stare in amazement. Their snowman has come to life. He's moving and talking and looking around with wonder at the world he's just entered. The snowman doesn't have a name yet, so the children start suggesting possibilities. Harold? Christopher? But then one child suggests Frosty, and the snowman's eyes light up. "Yes," he says. "Frosty. That's me. I'm Frosty the Snowman." Frosty is like a child himself, filled with innocent joy and wonder at everything he sees. The children teach him how to play, how to dance, how to have fun in the snow. They show him how to throw snowballs and slide down hills, and Frosty laughs with delight at each new experience. He is pure happiness, pure joy, a creature made of snow and magic who exists only to bring smiles to everyone he meets. But Professor Hinkle has realized that his hat, the hat he threw away so carelessly, is actually magical. It's the hat that gives his rabbit-pulling trick its power, and now it's creating even more impressive magic with this talking snowman. He wants his hat back, not to make children happy but to use its power for his own gain, to become a successful magician and make money. Professor Hinkle confronts the children and demands they return his hat. But Frosty is alive because of the hat, and if they give it back, Frosty will become just an ordinary snowman again, lifeless and still. The children refuse, forming a protective circle around Frosty, telling Professor Hinkle that the hat belongs to Frosty now. The magician tries to snatch the hat from Frosty's head, chasing the snowman around the town square, but the children help Frosty escape. They run through the snowy streets, Frosty's stick arms pumping, his carrot nose bobbing, the children laughing and shouting warnings about where Professor Hinkle is. For a wonderful hour, they play and run and enjoy Frosty's company, treasuring every moment with their magical friend. But as the afternoon wears on, Karen notices something troubling. The sun has come out from behind the clouds, and though it's still winter, the temperature is rising slightly. Frosty is beginning to look droopy. His snow body is starting to sag a little, and he's moving slower than before. He's melting. "I'm starting to feel strange," Frosty says, touching his face and finding it wet and soft. "I think I need to go somewhere cold." The children realize that Frosty is in danger. If he stays in the town, the sun will continue to shine on him, and he will melt completely. They need to get him somewhere cold, somewhere he can survive. But where? Then someone remembers, the North Pole. That's where it's always cold, where winter never ends. If they can get Frosty to the North Pole, he'll be safe forever. But how can they get to the North Pole? They're just children in a small town. The North Pole is thousands of miles away, in a place they've only read about in books. Then Karen has an idea. A refrigerated train car is leaving from the station that evening, heading north with goods that need to stay frozen. If they can get Frosty onto that train, it will keep him cold during the journey, and maybe, somehow, it will get him close enough to the North Pole that he can reach safety. With Professor Hinkle still searching for them, the children and Frosty make their way to the train station. They hide in the shadows, waiting for the right moment, and when the conductor isn't looking, they help Frosty climb into the refrigerated car. It's cold inside, wonderfully cold, and Frosty sighs with relief as he feels his snow body solidify again. Karen, brave and loyal, decides to go with Frosty to make sure he's safe. She climbs into the refrigerated car with him, and the door closes behind them. The train begins to move, carrying Frosty and Karen north, away from the warm town, toward colder regions where a snowman can survive. Inside the refrigerated car, it's so cold that even Karen, bundled in her winter coat, begins to shiver. Frosty notices and is concerned. "You're getting too cold," he says. "I don't want you to freeze." But Karen insists she's fine, that she needs to stay with Frosty to help him reach the North Pole. They ride for hours as the train chugs north, and Karen grows colder and colder. She tries to hide her discomfort from Frosty, but he can see that she's shaking, see that her lips are turning blue. He's torn between his own need for cold and his concern for his friend. At last, the train reaches a station in the far north, and Frosty and Karen get off. The landscape around them is blanketed in thick snow, trees bending under the weight of ice, the air so cold that every breath creates a cloud of frost. It's beautiful and remote, but it's also dangerous for a little girl. Karen is now dangerously cold. She's stopped shivering, which is a bad sign, and her movements have become slow and clumsy. Frosty realizes that if he doesn't get help soon, Karen might freeze. He picks her up in his stick arms, cradling her against his snow body even though he knows his coldness is making her situation worse, and he begins to walk, calling out for help. And help comes, in a form that seems almost miraculous. The forest around them begins to glow with soft, warm light, and animals emerge from the trees, rabbits and deer and forest creatures that are somehow more aware, more purposeful than ordinary animals. They lead Frosty to a small cabin where a kind woodsman lives, and the woodsman takes Karen inside, placing her near the fire, wrapping her in warm blankets, giving her hot soup. But while Karen is inside getting warm, Professor Hinkle has finally caught up with them. He's been following their trail, determined to get his magic hat back, and now he corners Frosty in the forest. Without Karen and the other children to protect him, Frosty is vulnerable. Professor Hinkle snatches the hat from Frosty's head, and immediately, the magic that animates the snowman fails. Frosty stops moving. His eyes, which were so full of life and joy just moments before, become nothing more than buttons again. His smile, which was so warm and genuine, freezes into the fixed expression carved by the children back in town. He is just a snowman again, just a pile of snow shaped like a man, and he will never move or speak or laugh again. Professor Hinkle, triumphant, puts the hat back on his head and walks away. Not caring about the sadness he's caused, thinking only of the magical performances he'll be able to give now that he has his hat back. Karen emerges from the cabin, warmed and recovered, and sees Frosty standing motionless in the snow. She runs to him, calling his name, shaking his arm, but he doesn't respond. He's gone. The magic is gone. And Karen begins to cry, her tears falling onto Frosty's snow body, mourning the loss of her friend who was alive for just one perfect day. But then something wonderful happens. The air around them begins to shimmer with gold and silver light, and a voice speaks, warm and kind. Don't cry, little one. Frosty isn't gone forever. Santa Claus appears, having heard about Frosty from the animals of the forest, who are all connected to the magic of Christmas. He looks at the motionless snowman and shakes his head sadly. Professor Hinkle took the magic hat, he says. Without it, Frosty cannot live. But you have magic. Karen says. Can't you bring him back? Santa smiles. The magic of Christmas is powerful, he says, and a friend's love is the most powerful magic of all. He places his hand on Frosty's shoulder, and slowly, gradually, the snowman begins to glow with an inner light. It's not the light of the magic hat, it's something deeper, something that comes from being loved and remembered, from the joy he brought to children, from the happiness he spread in his brief time alive. Frosty's eyes open. He looks around, sees Karen, sees Santa, and his face breaks into his familiar joyful smile. I'm back, he says. I'm really back. Santa explains that Frosty will have to return to the North Pole, where it's always cold enough for him to exist safely. But every winter, when the first snow falls, Frosty will be able to return to visit the children who love him. He'll make snowman appearances in towns everywhere, bringing his special magic and joy wherever he goes. Karen hugs Frosty, knowing that this is goodbye for now but not forever. Frosty climbs into Santa's sleigh, waving and calling out, "Happy birthday," one more time, because every reunion is like being born again, every return is a celebration. And as Santa's sleigh flies into the night sky, carrying Frosty safely to his new home at the North Pole, Karen knows that she'll see him again when winter returns. And indeed, every year when the first snow falls and children everywhere build snowmen, Frosty is there in spirit if not in form, his joy and magic living on in every snow creation, every winter celebration, every moment of happiness that snow brings to the world. Our final tale is perhaps the most famous Christmas story ever written, a narrative that has been told and retold in countless forms but which never loses its power to move hearts and change minds. This is Charles Dickens' masterpiece, A Christmas Carol, written in 1843 and instantly recognized as a perfect crystallization of the Christmas spirit. It is a story of redemption, of the possibility of change, of the power of compassion to transform even the coldest heart. In London, in the counting house of Scrooge and Marley, there sits a man named Ebenezer Scrooge. He is old, though perhaps not as old as he looks, for hardness ages a person in ways that years alone cannot. His face is sharp and pointed, like the edge of a flint, and his eyes are red and watery, suggesting both cold and the smoke from countless years of grudging fires kept small to save on coal. He is thin and wiry, and he speaks in a grating, rasping voice that seems to resent the effort of producing words. Scrooge is rich. His counting house is prosperous, his investments sound, his wealth growing year by year. But he is utterly miserable, and he makes everyone around him miserable as well. His clerk, Bob Cratchit, works at a small desk in a dismal cell-like room, shivering in the cold because Scrooge refuses to burn enough coal to properly heat the office. Bob earns 15 shillings a week, barely enough to support his family, and he knows better than to ask for more. It is Christmas Eve, and all around them, London is preparing for the holiday. People are hurrying through the streets with packages and evergreen branches, their faces bright with anticipation. Shop windows are decorated, churches are lit up, and there is a general sense of goodwill and celebration in the air. But Scrooge hates Christmas. He thinks it's a waste of time and money, an excuse for idleness and spending. When people wish him Merry Christmas, he responds with "Bah! Humbug," dismissing their cheer as nonsense. Scrooge's nephew, Fred, stops by the counting house to invite his uncle to Christmas dinner. Fred is everything Scrooge is not: young, cheerful, generous, and full of life. He loves Christmas and can't understand why his wealthy uncle refuses to celebrate it. "Come dine with us tomorrow, Uncle," Fred says warmly. "It will do you good to be among family and friends." But Scrooge refuses harshly. "What reason have you to be merry?" he demands. "You're poor enough." Fred laughs at this and responds, "What reason have you to be dismal? You're rich enough." But there's no moving Scrooge. He sends Fred away with his bah humbugs and returns to his ledgers, counting his money, calculating interest, thinking only of profit and loss. When Bob Cratchit hesitantly asks if he might have Christmas Day off, Scrooge agrees with such ill grace that Bob hardly dares say thank you. A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. Scrooge grumbles. "But I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier the next morning." That evening, Scrooge returns to his dark, lonely house. It is a gloomy place, large enough for many people but occupied only by Scrooge himself. The rooms are old and dismal, the furniture is sparse, and there is no warmth or comfort anywhere. Scrooge likes it this way. He takes a sort of perverse pleasure in his own discomfort, in the coldness and darkness of his life. But tonight, something is different. As Scrooge reaches for his door knocker, he sees something that stops his heart with shock. The face of his old business partner, Jacob Marley, appears in the knocker, pale and ghostly, staring at Scrooge with dead eyes. Marley has been dead for 7 years, but here his face is, as real as any living person. Scrooge is shaken but tries to dismiss what he's seen. "Humbug," he mutters, though his voice lacks its usual conviction. He goes inside, locks his door, and settles down for his meager dinner of gruel, trying to forget the strange vision. But at midnight, he is awakened by a sound, chains dragging across the floor, coming closer and closer. And then, through his locked door, passing through the solid wood as if it were nothing more than air, comes the ghost of Jacob Marley. Marley's ghost is a terrible sight. He is transparent, and through his spectral body, Scrooge can see the chairs and fireplace behind him. But more terrible than his transparency are the chains he wears. They are made of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. These chains are wound around Marley's body, and he drags them with every movement, their weight clearly causing him torment. "You don't believe in me," Marley's ghost says to Scrooge, who is trying to convince himself this is all indigestion, a bit of undigested beef or a blob of mustard causing hallucinations. But as Marley's ghost proves his reality through various supernatural demonstrations, Scrooge is forced to accept what he's seeing. And Marley has come with a message, a warning that might save Scrooge from Marley's own fate. "I wear the chain I forged in life," Marley explains, rattling his terrible burden. "I made it link by link, yard by yard. I girded it on of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Every act of selfishness, every moment of greed, every time I turned away from those in need and thought only of profit, I added another link to this chain. And now I must drag it through eternity." Marley's ghost tells Scrooge that the same fate awaits him unless he changes his ways. Scrooge's chain, Marley warns, is already longer and heavier than Marley's own, for Scrooge has had 7 more years to forge it with his miserly, heartless behavior. But there is hope. Marley has arranged for Scrooge to be visited by 3 spirits, 3 ghosts who will show him things he needs to see, who will give him a chance to change before it's too late. "Expect the first tomorrow, when the bell tolls 1, Marley says, and then he fades away, disappearing back into the darkness, his chains rattling into silence. Scrooge goes to bed shaken but still skeptical, still trying to convince himself that this was all a dream. But at 1 o'clock the next morning, he is awakened by a figure standing beside his bed, the ghost of Christmas past. This spirit is strange and contradictory in appearance. It looks like a child in some moments and like an old man in others. Its hair is white with age but its face is smooth and unwrinkled. It wears a simple white tunic, and from its head shines a clear bright light, like a flame burning pure and strong. The ghost of Christmas past takes Scrooge on a journey through his own memories, showing him the Christmases of his youth. They visit Scrooge as a young boy, left alone at boarding school during the holidays while his schoolmates all went home to their families. They see young Scrooge's loneliness, his sadness, and Scrooge feels these emotions fresh again, remembers what it was like to be that isolated child. They see Scrooge's sister, Fan, who came to the school one Christmas to bring him home, her face shining with love and excitement. "Father is so much kinder than he used to be," she tells young Scrooge. "He's agreed to let you come home for good." And Scrooge remembers Fan, dead now these many years, and realizes that Fred, his nephew whom he treats so coldly, is Fan's son, his connection to the sister he loved. They visit Scrooge as a young man, working as an apprentice for old Fezziwig, a man who knew how to celebrate Christmas properly. Fezziwig threw magnificent parties for his workers, creating joy and goodwill with relatively little expense. Scrooge sees how happy he was then, how much he admired Fezziwig, and he feels shame when he realizes that he could give his own clerk, Bob Cratchit, the same gift of celebration but chooses not to. Finally, they visit a scene that breaks Scrooge's heart, the moment when Belle, the woman he loved, released him from their engagement because his growing love of money had left no room in his heart for her. "Another idol has displaced me," she tells young Scrooge sadly. "I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one, until the master passion, gain, engrosses you." The ghost of Christmas past shows Scrooge what Belle's life became after she left him. She married another man, had children, created a warm and loving home. She found happiness, while Scrooge, who chose money over love, became the cold, lonely man he is today. Scrooge can bear no more. He begs the spirit to take him home, and suddenly he is back in his bed, alone, the ghost of Christmas past gone. But there is no time to rest, for as the clock strikes 1 again, the second spirit appears, the ghost of Christmas present. This ghost is huge and jovial, dressed in a green robe trimmed with white fur. He sits on a throne made of food. Turkeys, geese, game, poultry, brawn, great joints of meat, suckling pigs, long wreaths of sausages, mince pies, plum puddings, barrels of oysters, red-hot chestnuts, cherry-cheeked apples, juicy oranges, luscious pears, immense twelfth cakes, and seething bowls of punch. It is abundance personified, the spirit of feast and celebration. The ghost of Christmas present takes Scrooge out into the city to see how people celebrate Christmas. They visit the homes of miners living in the desolate moors, of lighthouse keepers far out at sea, of sailors on a ship far from shore. All of these people, despite their hardships and isolation, are celebrating Christmas with whatever they have, finding joy in the holiday regardless of their circumstances. But the visit that affects Scrooge most deeply is to the home of Bob Cratchit. Despite Bob's tiny wage, despite the poverty of their home, the Cratchit family is celebrating Christmas with love and joy. Mrs. Cratchit has cooked a goose, small but perfect, and has made a Christmas pudding that is the pride of her heart. The children are excited and happy, and even though their clothes are threadbare and their home is humble, there is more warmth and love here than in all of Scrooge's wealth. And then Scrooge sees him, Tiny Tim, Bob's youngest child. Tim is crippled, unable to walk without a crutch, clearly ill with some ailment that his family cannot afford to treat. But despite his physical limitations, Tim is the brightest spirit in the room. He has a kind word for everyone, a smile that lights up his pale face, and a faith in goodness that is unshakable. God bless us, everyone. Tim says as the family raises their glasses for a toast, and Scrooge feels his heart crack at these simple words, at the generosity of spirit in this sick child who has every reason to be bitter but instead chooses joy. Scrooge asks the ghost of Christmas present about Tiny Tim's future, and the spirit's answer is grave. I see a vacant seat in the poor chimney corner, the ghost says, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die. Scrooge is horrified. Tiny Tim, with his gentle spirit and his blessing for everyone, cannot die. But the ghost throws Scrooge's own words back at him: if he be like to die, he had better do it, and decrease the surplus population. These are the cold, cruel words Scrooge spoke earlier, and hearing them now, applied to this specific, beloved child, Scrooge feels their full weight of horror. The ghost of Christmas present also takes Scrooge to his nephew Fred's home, where a Christmas party is in full swing. The guests are playing games and laughing, and at one point they begin making fun of someone, a rich, mean old miser who lives all alone and refuses to celebrate Christmas with anyone. It takes Scrooge a moment to realize they're talking about him, that he is the object of their pity and mockery. But Fred defends him, even knowing how coldly Scrooge has treated him. I'll drink to his health for all that, Fred says, raising his glass. Uncle Scrooge. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to him, whatever he is. And Scrooge feels a rush of gratitude and regret, recognizing the love that Fred offers despite receiving nothing but rejection in return. As the night of Christmas present wears on, Scrooge notices that the ghost is aging, growing older and weaker before his eyes. And beneath the ghost's robe, Scrooge sees two children hiding, a boy and a girl, wretched and ragged, scowling and wolfish. This boy is ignorance, the ghost says. This girl is want. Beware them both, but most of all beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased. And with that warning, the ghost of Christmas present fades away, and Scrooge is left alone in the darkness. But not for long. The clock strikes 12, and the third spirit arrives, the ghost of Christmas yet to come. This ghost is the most frightening of all. It is shrouded in a deep black garment that conceals its entire form, showing nothing but one outstretched hand. It does not speak, only points, leading Scrooge forward into a dark future. They come to the city's business district, where Scrooge sees merchants and businessmen discussing a death. "When did he die?" one asks. "Last night, I believe," another answers. "What did he die of?" "I don't know," comes the reply. "I thought he'd never die." They laugh at this, cold and uncaring, and they discuss selling the dead man's belongings, dividing up his possessions. No one seems sad. No one mourns. Scrooge realizes with growing horror that they're talking about someone who died alone and unloved, someone whose death is greeted not with sorrow but with mercenary calculation. But he doesn't yet realize who this dead person is. The ghost shows him more scenes. Scrooge sees thieves selling stolen goods, including bed curtains and a shirt taken from a dead body. He sees a man and woman whose faces light up with relief when they learn of a death, because it gives them more time to pay their debts. In every scene, this death is treated as a convenience, even a blessing, but never as a loss to be mourned. Finally, the ghost takes Scrooge to a graveyard. They stand before a neglected tombstone, and the ghost points to it. Scrooge approaches slowly, filled with dread, and reads the name carved in the stone, Ebenezer Scrooge. It is his own grave. These scenes of unmourned death, of people celebrating or merely indifferent to someone's passing, these are about him. This is the future that awaits him if he doesn't change, a lonely death, forgotten and unmourned, his passing seen as a relief rather than a loss. "No!" Scrooge cries out, falling to his knees. "Spirit, hear me. I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been but for this intercourse. Why show me this if I am past all hope?" The ghost does not answer, but Scrooge sees that its hand is trembling, sees that perhaps there is still time, still possibility for change. "I will honor Christmas in my heart," Scrooge vows, clutching at the ghost's robes. "I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone." And suddenly, Scrooge is back in his bed. Morning light streams through his window, and the bells of the church are ringing. It is Christmas morning, and he is alive, and he has been given a second chance. Scrooge leaps from his bed with more energy than he's felt in decades. He throws open his window and calls down to a boy in the street below. "What's today?" he asks. "Today?" the boy replies, confused. "Why, Christmas Day." And Scrooge laughs with joy, realizing that the spirits accomplished their work in a single night, that he hasn't missed it, that there's still time to make amends. He sends the boy to buy the prize turkey from the poulterer's shop and have it delivered to Bob Cratchit's house, anonymously. It is the biggest turkey in the shop, large enough to feed the entire Cratchit family with leftovers to spare, and Scrooge pays for it gladly, laughing at the expense, rejoicing in the opportunity to do good. He dresses in his best clothes and goes out into the streets of London, which look completely different to his transformed eyes. Everything is beautiful, everyone is dear to him. He wishes Merry Christmas to everyone he passes, and when people look at him in shock, not recognizing this cheerful man as the old miser they know, he only laughs louder. He goes to his nephew Fred's house and knocks on the door. When Fred answers, Scrooge says simply, "Will you let me in, Fred?" And Fred's face lights up with joy and welcome. "Let you in? Uncle Scrooge, come in, come in. Merry Christmas." Scrooge stays for dinner, participating in all the games and laughter, being the life of the party, making Fred's wife exclaim that he's a different man entirely. And he is. He is new, reborn, transformed by the visions of the night and by his own decision to change. The next morning, Bob Cratchit arrives at work 18 minutes late, expecting to be scolded. But instead, Scrooge greets him warmly and tells him that not only will his wage be raised, but that Scrooge intends to help his family in any way he can, particularly Tiny Tim. From that day forward, Scrooge becomes as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city ever knew. He becomes a second father to Tiny Tim, who does not die but thrives under Scrooge's care and support. Scrooge participates in all Fred's family celebrations, becoming the uncle he should have been all along. And people say of him that he truly knows how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possesses that knowledge. Scrooge's transformation is complete. He has learned that no one is too old to change, that it's never too late to choose compassion over greed, connection over isolation, love over money. He has learned that Christmas is not a waste of time but a celebration of everything that makes us human, our capacity for joy, our need for connection, our ability to care for one another. And in changing himself, he changes the lives of everyone around him, proving that one person's transformation can ripple out to touch and improve an entire community. And so we come to the end of our journey through these timeless Christmas and winter tales. We have traveled from American cities to German villages, from Russian forests to the North Pole itself. We have met characters both human and magical, have witnessed transformations both subtle and dramatic, have seen the power of love and sacrifice, of courage and kindness, of redemption and renewal. Each of these stories, different though they may be, shares a common thread. They all remind us that winter's darkness calls forth our greatest light, that the cold season is precisely when we need warmth the most, and that the human heart, at its best, can triumph over any challenge. These tales have endured because they speak to truths that never change, because they capture something essential about the season of hope and giving that we call Christmas. As you drift toward sleep now, carry these stories with you. Let them warm your dreams like embers glowing in a fireplace. Remember that you, like the characters in these tales, have the power to transform yourself and your world through acts of love and courage. Remember that no one is beyond redemption, no situation beyond hope, no coldness that cannot be warmed by an open heart. May your sleep be deep and peaceful, may your dreams be filled with wonder. And may you wake refreshed and renewed, carrying the spirit of these timeless tales into your own life. And if you enjoyed this journey through Christmas and winter stories, please consider subscribing to this channel and giving this video a like. Your support helps us continue bringing these sleep stories to you, creating a space where history, mythology, and peaceful rest come together. Good night, dear listener. May your winter be warm, your heart be light, and your dreams be as magical as the stories we've shared tonight.